Welcome, first year students. I'm Jesie, and this is also Jesie.
Hello.
I work at the Wellness Center here at UCCS. I'm a staff clinician here, which means I do mental health therapy with our students. And I also work with a program called Gateway Guides, which is a specific layer of service that we've designed only for our freshmen to utilize to help with their adjustment to campus. Jesie, you want to tell them where you work?
Sure. I work in the Mosaic office, which is our multicultural office on campus. We support students, we promote diversity all across campus, diversity in lots of different aspects, I guess. I also work with our LGBT programs on campus. Yes.
So Jesie and Jesie have paired up today to talk to you about some different things you might encounter your first year of college. I'm a first generation college student.
Same here. Yep.
We're both first generation college students. What that means is that nobody in our family before us went to college. So we were kind of the trailblazers, would you say?
That's right, yeah.
Which came with a different set of stressors, I think, than it would have if my family had gone to college beforehand. There's some things that I feel like are pretty generalizable, regardless of first year or first generation or not. Would you agree?
I agree, yeah, for sure.
So some of the things that you might encounter are difficulty making relationships, forming relationships here on campus. That was hard for me because I was a commuter student. My parents live and still live right down the street from the university. I went here for my undergrad. And so it was difficult for me to want to stay on campus and make relationships and build friendships. And I think that that's normal. From all of the freshmen that I've worked with, it's not uncommon to hear that making relationships or finding your people on campus it can be difficult initially. So some of that isolation and feelings like that can be hard. Another aspect for me was financial. I really wasn't quite sure how I was going to pay for college, and my parents hadn't navigated that either, having not gone themselves. So I was able to talk to financial aid office and things like that, but it took me talking about not knowing what was going on because I didn't really feel like I was part of all the other students here on campus initially.
Mm-hmm. And that can be an uncomfortable place to be, especially when it seems like all of your peers around you have everything figured out. But for me, just thinking about financial aid specifically, for me, I was just in a position where I needed to rely on grants and scholarships and financial aid to make it here. But having that conversation with my mom wasn't always an easy one because there's a stack of forms that you have to fill out, right? With all of these new terms in connection to college and the college experience. And on my end, I'm telling my mother, these are the things that we need to do. These are the steps that we need to take. And for her reaction is, why do they need my social security number on all these forms, right? So the conversation for us, for me being the first in my family, like that's typically how it went. It wasn't that my parents weren't supportive; they were very supportive. But again, just there's definitely language and experience that comes along with being a college student. That if it's your first time or you're first in your family, those are all things that are new that you have to navigate for sure.
That brings up a good point. I was thinking as you were talking, Jesie, about how it felt for me to try to describe the new stressors and difficulties I had as a college student to my family who didn't know that same experience, or even some of my peers that weren't first generation, so our struggles were a little different. But it got me thinking a lot about when I was a freshman, my motivation for actually being in school. I wasn't in the major that I wanted to be in when I first started because I didn't really want to go to college. I wasn't quite sure that was the right space for me. But my parents wanted so badly for me to go to college, to be successful, to kind of change the course of our family's education history or background, I guess. And that was a ton of pressure for me. And having a pretty close relationship with my family was great, but it still didn't facilitate on its own that I would be able to talk about, I don't know that I want to do this. And, I don't know if this is the right major for me. So that took a lot of courage on my part to really evaluate and kind of reflect on what my motivation for even being in school was. Because it's not sustainable, like you and I talked about, to just go to college for your parents. Especially if you are struggling initially, if that's your only motivation in being here, it's going to be unhelpful. And we have a lot of resources on campus to talk through things like that. But other than that, we wanted to really make sure that we normalize some of those experiences you might have as a first year student, as a first generation college student. and what that adjustment looks like. There's some other resources too in this guide where you can access specifically what mental and emotional support might look like. You can access us through the Wellness Center. And Jesie and I work really collaboratively together on making sure that students have the support that they need. So you can reach out to either of us.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I do in my office, in my role. So the Mosaic office stands for, it's a long one, right? So Multicultural Office for Student Access, Inclusiveness, and Community. So that's definitely a mouthful, so Mosaic for short. But what that basically means is we are all about students finding their community on campus, right? A big part of being successful in college and being a successful student is having a strong bond and connection to your campus. And a big part of that is being engaged in lots of different ways on campus, but it's also important to find ways to fit in, right? So for me, as I stood in the residence halls as a first-year student here at UCCS, and for me, I grew up in a very different part of town, right? Across the city in a different environment. So for me, I was kind of immersed in this new culture, big social culture as well. And for me, that was a big shock for me. So for me, it became important to try to make those connections because what I wanted to do was go to class, get my test done, study, and then go back to my room or go visit my family, going to the place where I was most comfortable. So on weekends, while other people were staying here and engaging in activities, I wanted to go back home where I was comfortable, right? So for me, looking back, I really wish I would have pushed a little harder and really tried better to connect to campus because so many students that we see here, Jesie and I see this all the time, students that are engaged in campus, students that know staff people, if they're professors, kind of beyond just the hello, right? Students do better when they're engaged to campus, and that's very important. And for me, that was big for me because for me, that was a big part of my success moving forward because it took me some time to figure it out. And the important thing to know is that a lot of these feelings during the transition from high school to college, you may experience feeling like you're the only one that's going through this. And you don't want to bring attention to this because you want to go with the flow. Everyone else around you looks more prepared. So then you don't want to look like the one who's not, right? But the reality is that every first-year student's experiencing the same thing. Maybe not necessarily in the same way, but we're all students are looking for a place to connect. All students are trying to figure out habits and time management and all these different things that go along with adjusting here. So it's important. Really reflect on those feelings and seek somebody like me or Jesie out because it's our job. It's our job. It's our job. It's every staff person's on this campus. It's their job to make sure that you reach a successful graduation and that your time here is productive and you're growing not only academically but personally. So there's tons of people here who care about you. And want to see you succeed. It's actually our job to make sure that you do succeed, right? So help us out, right?
And if you don't know where to go for what specifically you're struggling with, ask anybody and they'll help you to get to the right person.
Right.
And usually in any office, if you say one of the Jessies, then they'll track one of us down.
That's right.
So we hope that you have an awesome first year and that we get to meet you, and we will hopefully talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.